And the countdown. Hi, folks. It's Joe Firestone for Empowering Democracy. And I'm here with my guest, activist, Gregory Mallard, who's an amazing activist in Georgia and who will soon be starting his own shows. We're streaming to a number of places, including YouTube and Facebook. Greg
and TikTok.
And TikTok. And Gregory is a longtime friend of mine and supporter of mine, and very activist and energetic young activist who's going to be doing great things in the future. We expect to have two other guests here in just a few minutes. They've been cleaning up a show of their own, specifically Brandy Weaver and Dolores Peers. So I think they'll be joining us soon. We've been doing a series here. The series is about how can we make it happen? What's it? Well, it started out as two objectives, specifically creating a movement called Dump the Corruption. Second, creating a movement to break off the real progressives from the Democratic Party. Because running as Democrats, getting elected as Democrats, functioning as Democrats inside of the Democratic Party has resulted in them behaving in ways completely inconsistent with how they run. We decided after discussion, though, that the more important of the two objectives. Hello, Brandy. Hello, Dee.
Hello. Yeah, we had somebody upset that saying Jerusalem never belonged to the Palestinians. So we were explaining to them the cultural, let's see here, what's the word, population of that area before 1948. It was 87% Palestinians, 10% Christians, and 3% Jews, and they lived in peace at that time, before 1948.
That is true.
But I did, because I know Ava is listening, and as far as the religious side goes, that's something that we ought to have Ava on too, because she grew up in a Catholic all-boys school, to where a lot of the things that they got taught were different from what you'd say get taught in church.
Right.
And so there's things that she can argue. And they were taught science.
Great.
Yeah. And it's an all-boys Catholic school in Arkansas.
Some of those schools are very good.
Yeah. I mean, from what the education she got was really good, and she's really smart. So, I mean, I would love to get her on talking about what she was taught in that too, about those areas and all that stuff,
Well,
and the Bible.
I think it would be good to get her on.
Hmm.
Okay, so what I was saying is that we came to agreement that we were going to put the first of the objectives, or the second of the objectives, I should say, which is breaking off the real progressives from a Democratic Party, onto the back burner for now, and focus instead on the dump the corruption objective.
Hmm.
And at that point, we began to talk about the logic of the dump the corruption campaign. And then we began talking about its weaknesses and strengths. Actually, we started on the weaknesses first.
Yeah, we were talking about the weaknesses last night.
Right. And we sort of agreed that we would continue today with more discussion of the weaknesses before we moved on to the strengths. I was querying to find out uh, what some of the other weaknesses were that Greg and Brandy and Dee saw
Yeah.
in the dump the corruption proposition. So I'm going to turn it over to the floor again. What are some of the other weaknesses we will have to face?
I think the finances is going to be a weakness we're going to have to face, because we've got to do it on to get rid of the corruption within the American government. We've got to get the big money out. To do that, we've got to replace them with candidates that are running on small dollar donations, so they're not going to have the same corporate funding, which we don't want the corporate funding in any way, but they're still going to have to try to run successful campaigns. I think the idea of running in the Democratic Party is useless at this point. They've already shown us that.
Well, it seems to me it's useless to try to run inside of the Democratic Party. But I don't think we can make that a litmus test of the dump the corruption campaign. I think we can talk about the failures of all the people who have been running uh, as members of the Democratic Party to actually do anything when they get in. We can certainly talk about that. That's extremely relevant. But in the end, I think the choice of party has to be up to the candidates who want to run. And from our standpoint of running the dump the corruption aspect of the campaign, that is just about whether the money they're taking for their campaign is coming from the big donors or is not. If they can get small donors to fund the campaign and win, even though they're running, as Democrats, I think that, I guess what I'm thinking is that, okay, I would like to focus this campaign on the issue of whether the candidates are taking the big money or not, taking the big money.
Yeah.
I don't want to bring in the party issue explicitly because I think that requires us to argue out the party issue. And we really don't have to do that, because if we get people to agree to use the money situation as a litmus test, then that's going to get rid of most of the Democrats and almost every Republican. Sweep Congress clean. And then if there are people in there who want to be Democrats, well, so what? They still won't have to face a party structure that's full of corruption.
Mm-hmm.
They won't have to face a financial structure. Okay, but what they will have to face is their voters, and they will have to be advocating for policies that are good for the public, and they'll also have to deliver on those policies, or they will be thrown out by the voters.
Yeah. We have to make sure that we've got people who are not taking the money to run against them, because if you don't have somebody to vote for against either corporate politician,
And then you'll still get the corporate politicians.
yeah.
And you don't want to do that. So, yes, we do have to build up and support third party politicians. We have to inform the public.
Yeah.
Inform the public about who's corrupt, okay, and who is not. We have to inform them about third party politicians who are clean and who are running clean campaigns as well. So voters know they do have some choices to turn to,
Mm-hmm.
who are not being bought by big money.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do think that, okay, is very important.
And one of the biggest arguments I've gotten from some locals is they say, well, it's the federal that's corrupt, not the state or the local. And that's where I bring up, like I said last night, the fact that the federal does wash the money through the states. And we saw that with Gavin Newsom.
We did.
And
We saw that in California,
yeah.
and we saw that was instrumental in the defeat. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring that in
Oh, you're fine.
as yet. We saw in California how the funneling of money through the state party committees to the representatives was undermining AB 1400, okay, in California. That bill looked like it had a majority, looked like it was going to pass. At the last minute, that bill was pulled by its sponsor, and so it never got a vote. And the reason why it was pulled by its sponsor was because he was under tremendous pressure to withdraw the votes from his colleagues, who didn't want to be in the position of voting against single payer, but who felt they had to vote against single payer because otherwise they would lose their money from the party committees. So that's what was going on there. And that's the way it happened. Okay. Any more weaknesses?
One weakness I could find is we've got to be sure that candidates are held responsible, and incumbents as well. And if we don't hold them accountable for the big money donors the big money donations, then we're going to be failing ourselves. So we've got to have this going on full stop. We're going to have to go full metal jacket with this once it takes off in every single election going forward.
Right. We're going to have to continue to hold them accountable, continue to report on whether they're taking any big money.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also going to have to continue to report on how they performed in office.
And this is also going to have to be done even on our state level.
Right.
So I'm going to be working on the state level stuff as well.
Yeah.
In my own state.
I'm doing that too.
Okay. The state and local effort. I think it's got to be local also.
Yeah. That's why I said the other day, everything from your city council and school board all the way up to your state and federal.
Yes,
So,
I think.
City council, county government, your state government, and federal.
I think we have to be reporting on all that, but that also highlights the resources problem.
Like, take my local county government, for example, and this is something I have been doing for years. We've got this corporation that come in here and has taken over our trash, our recycling and all that. And it come out that even our county commissioners here was taking a lot of corporate money to get this company to come in and take a public service, which was once publicly funded by the county taxpayers. And now it's all the money's going to this corporation. And I've been on the forefront of holding even my local officials accountable for that. So I've been on the forefront of this even on the local level for a few years now.
So there's a lot of work to do. And that's why we have to get a lot more streamers in.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Even a future streamer like myself who's going to be raising these issues to even a whole potentially new audience.
Right. So we're basically starting off with two streamers on the dump the corruption thing, right? Because you, Brandy, and Dee are going to continue to focus on the foreign policy aspects, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you won't be directly doing the dump the corruption shows, though you may be frequently guesting on our shows.
Well, we will do some because we are more focused on foreign policy, but we also bring it back home to where it shows how foreign policy affects us at home.
Okay,
and
very
so
good. Okay,
that's
we are then starting off with 3 streaming programs.
Yeah.
With mine, with Greg's, okay, and yours.
Yeah.
But we need many more than that to do all this work.
Yes, we do. And we need people that are willing to get into it at the ground level in their own state, which we see that Savvy does that constantly. She's involved in stuff in her own state. That's how she knows Jill Stein. She interviews tenants. She does the mutual aid there and all that. And she's also very supportive of third-party candidates, and she'll bring them on her show. And they're even talking about doing more of that. So in a way, even though they're not doing it by the checklist, they're still working on it, on the dump the corruption. They're just not calling it dump the corruption, but it's the same idea.
Maybe eventually we can persuade them
Yeah.
To use the label and to use the rule as well as what they're already doing. Okay, but what we've been talking about in terms of expanding our group, for example, with the punch up pod people,
Yeah.
okay, uh, okay, we want to do that with them. We'd like to move beyond that and get other streamers involved also,
Yep.
as many as we can, because there's just a tremendous, amount of work to do. Okay, I did some thinking some time ago about strengths and weaknesses. Let me see if this is the right. I have a number of things that are called dump the incumbents, and I always have to check to see whether I have the full thing. I have a. Now this one is the wrong one. It's got a. I want to remove that, and I want to get out of here for the time being. I have a longer slide set with 31 or 32 slides in it. And some of those slides we're dealing with strengths and weaknesses, because I've always considered those. Slide set we just went through wasn't exactly the one I was looking for. Well, let's see. No, I pulled up the same thing again. Okay, let me get it out of here. Remove it from the stream. I've staged 3 of these things with the same title, which I should have had the foresight not to do that. But I did not. So here we are. Let me see if this is the one. Nope, this is not the one either. It's a different one. Okay, so maybe the best I can do for now is that 26 slide set. And maybe I have to do a little cleanup of the slide sets I have here, since I don't seem to know which is which. So let me get this one again and go through it. As you can see, it's expanded from what I was originally talking about. I'll go back to the advantages in a little while. But here are some of the objections that I thought of the first time around. They were defeating legislators who don't take big donor money. Now, since the original orientation here was to dump the incumbents, there was a danger in that rule, because people might make mistakes and defeat people who don't take any big money. So that was a disadvantage, which is not there now, since we changed the concept slightly. Yeah. So next was cutting short the careers of good congressmen and senators who do take money from wealthy donors, but who are unbought. Now, there do seem to be some of those in Congress, but for reasons I'm going to bring out in a little while, we just have to accept that as a disadvantage and live with it, because the most important point is the macro point that we have to change the system. There's also the objection of throwing expertise out of Congress, along with the people who have it. And I have an answer to that one that I'll go over in just a minute. Further, there was a point that applying the litmus test might make it harder to get things done because leadership teams are disrupted. Of course, I have an answer for that. Then there's the objection it won't work to bring change because close to equal numbers of both parties will be defeated, so party gridlock is going to remain. So I have an answer to that one too. Then there was it won't work because too many voters will be afraid to take the risk of making the situation even worse. I think that's actually a pretty strong one. So we'll talk about that in just a little while. And the last one is it won't work because it's electoralism, and that never works. That's actually a popular objection to it. So going on to the next slide. Defeating incumbents who don't take money. Yes, some incumbents may fall due to error, but we can try to minimize these losses by publishing a weekly list of those who don't take big money at the official Dump the Incumbents website. So it should say Dump the Corruption website. We never developed the Dump the Corruption website because we were too busy doing the weekly programs last year. This year we have to do better and have a Dump the Corruption website where one of the things we would do is actually publish the weekly list of those candidates who don't take big donor money.
Another issue that you come into is they may not be taking big money, but are they still following the corrupt party line, the corruption within the party?
They may still be following the corruption, but as long as they're not taking the big money, then they have to be defeated, okay, on other grounds.
Yeah.
Okay? In other words,
which is where us changing it to dump the corruption. If we know that they're following the party line and we know that that party line is corrupt, then we would dump them. That's where the difference
I don't
is.
know how to make that a part of a simple rule.
Yeah.
Okay? In other words, the simple rule is not the only reason why we would dump a person.
But if they oppose the issues that would help the people, I think is where we got to, basically point that out. If they're opposing Medicare for all, if they're opposing the education.
Yes, I think that's right. That we should not shrink from pointing out what the candidates are for. So we should talk about whether they're taking the big donor money. Okay, and that's a very important issue from our point of view. If they are taking the big donor money, that's a sufficient condition for getting rid of them. Okay, but then we would also report on what their stance is, okay, on other issues, okay, and let the voters decide based on what their stance is on other issues.
And you've also got to put in there any opponents that are running against them, whether they're third party or Republican, and their stances. That way, all the information is right there in front of the voter. They're not having to take the time to search for it.
That is right. We have to accept the responsibility of giving information that the voters need to make a rational decision to them and do as good a job on that as we can. Okay, and the last little bullet point on this was, and also reporting on attempts to provide misinformation about the candidates. I shouldn't just say the incumbents here, but the candidates.
Yeah.
In other words, because there are all kinds of attempts in these elections to lie about the candidates. We saw that in many of the progressive races this year. Okay, if we looked at them, the
I
candidates were lying like troopers about, their opponents.
mm, you saw that really clear as day with Nomiki Konsk.
Yeah, I wasn't watching. Oh, that she was lying about her opponents.
Yeah, she was lying. She attacked the progressive that was DSA backed, that was backed and supported by AOC. She attacked her
Psh,
during the entire time she was in, and then right before she dropped out. But during any debates, she would single her out and leave the other candidates alone in the primary.
yes.
So,
We also saw in many progressive races, like for example the Summer Lee race. Her opponent was lying all over the place with
yeah,
ads. Of course, Nina Turner was savaged by lies backed by big money. And so the point is, we also have to report on attempts to provide lots of misinformation about the candidates, both
yeah.
the incumbents and the challengers. Okay, now it's broader than just the incumbents.
And I agree with Robert here that it's going to take a lot of work keeping track of all that.
Yes.
But that's why if a lot of us help out within our own states and look at our own races and report on those, then it's not being all put on one person. If we form a group,
Yeah, right. Or even two persons or four persons.
yeah,
We have to get a lot of streamers involved in this.
yeah,
I mean, we might have to get 30 plus streamers all across the country involved in doing this at some level.
yeah,
I don't know that all of them will want to spend, 3 programs a week on it. But of course, we need to welcome those who are willing to do that or even more. But it'll be a help if some well known streamers even put in 1 program a week on this on a continuous basis.
yeah,
What might not also be a bad idea, and this is what I just had a thought, is if we also created a Facebook group called Dumping the Corruption
Yes.
and have a lot of information shared there and have people from all 50 states in the group and have a very good coordinated effort across the board to
yeah.
get this done, even in a Facebook group. The 5 of us, well, the 4 of us
Well, and I see us
could
being
be.
able to get the Red Berets to help with some of that too, because they'll know what's going on in their individual states and
Mhm.
who supports what because they pay as much of attention to it as we do.
I completely agree. We'll have to get the Red Berets involved. I've been waiting for the end of the year for them to be finished helping with the whole Washington campaign.
Yeah,
Uh, uh, to actually talk to Laura about it. But I think that, but given the way things are going for them, they should be pleased to join us in this because
yeah.
they're being blocked at every turn by the corruption.
In their state, and this is a way for them to report that corruption to other people
Oh
to
yeah, but
show
they're
what's
not
going
only
on so we can
being
vote them
blocked.
out.
Uh, all right, but they're not only being blocked by the corruption whole Washington is facing, but on a national basis, okay,
Yeah.
for the Red Berets, uh, it's much harder to strengthen the whole network at the national level because of the corruption that's appearing every place.
Hmm.
Okay, so
Yeah.
okay, I think we ought to be able to get some help from them. And we should certainly try to do that. But Greg, to get back to your idea, I think that's a fine idea. Would you like to start up that group?
Sure. And we can also get somebody like Cora Emanuel to help create a group cover banner to go in there as well. And that would be really great to have him on board with the graphic design.
Mhm.
Okay, Cora's great. But somebody else I think we might be able to get aboard to help us as well is Fran Bauer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
Um,
Jimmy Sunderland as well.
Okay, I think Jimmy Sunderland does, really excellent graphics. She did the Dump the Incumbents graphic, with the animation,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
which I think, was very clever, and very well done. But here's the thing we should also consider. You're about to laugh.
No, I was laughing because I saw Corey Emanuel comment, "Hi, I heard my name mentioned."
Yeah, cool.
As Steve says, love Fran. I think we all love
Yes.
Fran.
Oh, yes. Fran taught me what I know about graphics. I just don't have as much experience as her.
But let me
Fran is
say
very quick,
something
too.
that's
She's
not
very quick.
often spoken about. Okay, at least I haven't heard it actually spoken about with respect to Fran. When you work with Fran, as I had been doing for all my streams until we recently started, on empowering democracy, which I set up so I would not need actually that much in graphics. Okay. So Fran did the graphic that I always use for these programs.
Hmm.
But when I worked with her, where I needed graphics, 3, 4, 5 times a week, uh, she was completely reliable. If I got her a request early in the day, she got me the graphic in plenty of time to schedule the program.
Yep.
I almost never had to wait for it. She
A
was.
question about the group. Like, what time frame are you looking at for a potential group launch?
I think for as long as soon as you can get it, Greg.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. I think we should get it launched.
Yeah, I have one of Fran's red berets. We traded work. She has one of mine.
All right. I have, actually, I think I've got 3 of her red berets, certainly 2 of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a red beret from Fran as well.
Yeah. And I have 2 that are Michelle's red berets.
Oh, Michelle does some beautiful work too.
Beautiful work. And then I have, I believe, one of Laura's red berets, which is my favorite one to wear for these programs because it's light and it doesn't feel like I'm wearing it. But when I go out, then I wear some of the other red berets. In other words, when I want to be warm, then I wear uh, Fran's or Michelle's. Anyway, here's another weakness. Defeating legislators who are on board. Using the general rule of voting against incumbents to be replaced by voting against, but people taking the money from big donors, but still don't appear to vote for the interests of those donors. It is unavoidable that this will happen sometimes, but all these incumbents, I should say all these candidates now, have to do to defend themselves is stop taking the big money. Second, if people are taking donor money, there will always be a tendency. There will always be a tendency for that money to influence them. Quote, men are not saints, unquote. We cannot trust that what did not corrupt them yesterday will not corrupt them today, or I should have added tomorrow. And finally, the goal here is to get money out of politics. We cannot sacrifice that goal to accommodate the few Congresspeople who may be saints. I don't know if you would call them exactly saints, but I think there are people in Congress now who take big money, but are still probably pretty good congressmen. I could probably name 10 or 15 of those. We might lose those with a rigid application of the rule. But here, I think we have to do something simple that voters can follow, okay, in a very simple way. Okay, and here again, the goal is the macro goal of getting money out of politics. Okay, I think we cannot sacrifice that goal to accommodate the few Congresspeople who are saints. Okay, so that's what I say about that one. Okay, the next objection was throwing experts out of Congress. Okay, that might be a weakness of applying the rule. Going further, that would mean that we would remove critical legislative skills from Congress that will prevent it from producing good legislation. My response to that was there may be a degradation of legislative skill if the rule is followed. But what is this skill used for now? Bottling up legislation in committees, writing overly complex legislation that voters don't understand, using nifty parliamentary maneuvers to protect members from accountability by giving them legislative fig leaves. Of course, some skill is needed, but the willingness to legislate for the people, or for the public purpose, I usually say, is more important than high-level legislative skills that are not used for the public purpose. Guess what I want you to imagine here is that there are people who want to form legislation that, from the content point of view, is very, very, very good. But there are many other people who don't want to do that and who do not do that, but they're very skilled at stopping the good legislation from getting to a vote. So, the idea of referring to general legislative skills and the danger of throwing out quite a lot of those, from my point of view, it's not much of a danger. It's much more of a danger to not be able to get the good legislation to the floor so the Congress people can vote on it and be accountable. It's the question of accountability which is so important here. And it's more important than the technical legislative skill that someone like a Nancy Pelosi has in profusion. But when you talk about talent for putting together good legislation that will serve people, she doesn't seem to have any of that because she doesn't seem interested in it. So that's what I say about throwing experts out of Congress. Now, I could say more. I could point to people who have the legislative skill. Okay, I think probably Rashida Tlaib has it.
Yeah.
She doesn't get much chance to use it because she's putting forward legislation that has very good content. And so nobody else wants to vote for that. And so that's the problem of getting the big donor money out of politics, I think. So next is the disruption of leadership teams. Some will criticize using the general rule of dump the corruption on grounds that it's going to disrupt the leadership in Congress. The most general reply to that is that disrupting leadership blocks and structures is a feature of the general rule. It isn't a bug. The results that congressional leaders have produced over these 40 years, these last 40 years, of course, have been terrible.
Mm-hmm.
They've presided over the worst decline in equality in our history. They have presided over the worst accumulation of unsolved societal problems since the period before the Civil War. So disruption and replacement of these leadership teams is a feature of dump the corruption. It isn't a bug, to say that again. Then there's the objection. It won't work to bring change. That was the point. Following the rule won't work to bring change because close to equal numbers of both parties will be defeated, so party gridlock is going to remain. So to that, I respond by saying it's not about party gridlock blocking change as much as it is about corporate money, individual wealth, creating party gridlock, blocking legislation that benefits people. That's what it's about. The change we need is getting the big money out of Congress and elections for Congress, getting corporations out of politics, and getting individual wealth out of politics. Disrupting Congress by defeating large numbers of incumbents and challengers who take big money will bring rule changes, structural changes, democratization, and why does my last line always get blocked out? I don't know. I lost my thread here. Wish I could make that go away. Structural changes, democratization, and I'm just not sure what that is. And I don't want to pull up the original one to find out. I think you get the sense of it. Okay, anyway. Oh, there it is. Wait. So why did it disappear for a minute? Well, and policy changes to Congress. That's what it was. Structural changes, democratization, and policy changes to Congress. So that's my answer to it won't work to bring change. So it won't work because too many will fear making the situation worse. Now, I think that's a serious objection because voters, they feel so isolated often and so locked into the present system. They don't like what it's producing, but they have the feeling that radical change isn't going to improve the situation, that it's going to make it worse. Now, we feel that radical change is the only way to go. To us, it's the only thing that seems to be sensible. But we have to persuade other people that that is the case. The fear arises out of the specific choices people must make. Two major party non-incumbents who are running in a primary and taking big money is one situation they might face. So what should they do? Well, the rule I have here is that they should vote for the non-incumbent taking the least amount, okay, of big money. But of course, if they can vote for a candidate, if they have a candidate who's a non-incumbent who's not taking any big money, then that's the candidate that they should vote for. Now, what if two major party candidates are running in a primary taking big money? Dump both incumbents if there's a non-incumbent who is running. On the other hand, if a non-incumbent is running, you don't necessarily want to run for that non-incumbent if that non-incumbent is taking big money. So there you have a situation where you want to find somebody who isn't taking the big money, and then the priority there should be for you to vote for that non-incumbent. If no non-incumbent is running, here I say vote for the incumbent taking the least amount, okay, of big money. And I know that's distasteful, but I think I still do have to hold to that, because if you're voting for the incumbent who's taking the least amount of big money, that incumbent is likely to be the least bought. It's also true that that incumbent is likely to be the one who doesn't have much power in Congress, and so is not likely to be as big a problem in terms of persuading them to go over to public purpose legislation. In the case where there's one major party incumbent and one major party candidate taking big money, vote for third party candidates not taking big money. So those are pieces of advice to avoid making the situation worse in difficult situations. Here I was trying to meet some objections, some cases that Lana Dell, okay, was bringing up. What if this, what if that, what if the other thing? And these were my answers in terms of dumping the incumbents as opposed to the non-incumbents. Of course, now that would be replaced by the idea that if an incumbent and a non-incumbent, okay, is running and both are taking big money, then vote for third-party candidates not taking big money. So that would be the way this slide would be changed. So the final objection I entertained at the time was the objection that it won't work because of electoralism. Now, I encountered that objection in talks with Savvy Sabs and Franco, okay, a frank analysis, and to some degree when talking with Kit and Jerry Vassalatos, okay, as well. I guess I didn't get much pushback from Jerry Vassalatos. It was more from Kit, okay, on these grounds. The idea that elections don't work. So my reply to that was the objection says, since when we look at history, we see that every significant change is motivated by movements and collective direct action of various kinds. So my reply to that was, first, that electoralism does work in some contexts, but not in others. And I pointed out that electoralism supplemented by direct action has worked all over Western and Northern Europe, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand to produce strong social safety nets and welfare states with much greater equality and happiness than in the US. Okay, I could even say that that has worked in Thailand also, where they passed a Medicare for, not a Medicare for all bill, but well, I guess it was kind of a Medicare for all bill because it was based on the U.S. Medicare type of model, but they extended it to the whole population. So it was a Medicare for all bill. They brought in U.S. consultants to help them design that particular system. And so they advised the Taiwanese to structure their healthcare system on that basis. This happened actually during the 1990s. And they increased the percentage of people covered to just about everyone in Taiwan now over the years. There are no limitations on how many times you get to see a doctor and for what. It's very low cost at the point of service, though, but not entirely free. And there are subsidies for those who can't afford to pay. It's an extremely popular system in Taiwan, as far as I've been able to find out. And the irony of it all is it's based on our system, just extending it to the whole population. But they got it passed in Taiwan. I go on to say the reason electoralism has been largely ineffective in the U.S. is because the conditions for its success, mass movements using frequent but direct action, having fair and unrigged elections, strong unions, fair and unrigged elections, much greater levels of equality, and legislators that legislate for people have been undermined by the power of money. That's what's happened here in the U.S. So it's because the conditions for its success that at one time used to characterize the U.S., maybe back in the 1960s, do not characterize us anymore. Those conditions have been undermined by big money. But I'm basically arguing here that as those conditions are being brought back by the mass movements we are seeing today, by the stronger unions and union organizing that we are seeing today, as those conditions are being restored, the environment for electoralism actually working gets stronger and stronger. If we can remove the conditions, of rigged elections that are being caused by money in politics, we can give a boost to all these movements, and we can also help to create the conditions that made the mass movement successful in earlier times. So that's what, I argue here. More okay, on electoralism. So what we have to do is bring back the conditions that underpin electoralism that produce the legislation that benefits people. We do that through mass movements demanding different forms of justice using a variety of direct actions, ranging from minor protest actions to general strikes. Actually, for my money, if we ran a general strike that was successful and we made only one demand, strong legislation getting the big money out of politics, that in itself would be enough to restore the conditions to make general strikes no longer necessary. Anyway, the key here is to increasingly disrupt economic systems that work for the wealthy but not for anyone else, while aligning with and restoring unions. But second, to make electoralism work, we need to bring mass movements and direct action to the election system itself. That's what dump the incumbents, or dump the corruption, I should say, will do. It is not electoralism. And then I point out what I've said here before, okay, that electoralism is the idea that what we have to do is to make change in the interests of the people, is for each of us to register and vote for a candidate who has a good chance to win and whose views and policy agendas are most in line with ours. And that if we do that in each election, all will be well for both our nation and ourselves. Dump the incumbents to dump the corruption does not assume that. Instead, it assumes that the electoral system won't work to produce such results because it has been corrupted by money and now works to re-elect incumbents and others who will do the donors' bidding rather than the people's bidding. Dump the incumbents is direct action against such a system and is designed to disrupt it. To disrupt the process of getting money to candidates. And it's, let me see if I can get it to show me the last line here. It is designed to disrupt the flow of money to candidates. And it's, that's, I guess I cannot make that happen. But the point here was, it's designed to disrupt the flow of money to candidates. Oh, God, I just had that. Somehow I lost it. Well, on to the next one. I'm disrupting the flow of this. That's not good. So I read the conclusion, which was the same, okay, as yesterday, and basically made the concluding point that it's about creating the primacy of bottom-up politics in America and the end of the political oligarchy we live under. That dump the corruption is about the general strike of voters against money, okay, in politics. So that's a longer account of how I answered the weaknesses that I saw. I know people are going to bring up those weaknesses in discussions about the general rule of dump the incumbents, the litmus test that we want them to use, okay, in voting. So that's what I saw when I originally thought about that. You supplemented these weaknesses here with some other weaknesses, and that, okay, is very useful. So let me ask you then at this point, do you see any more weaknesses that we have to be careful of?
Um, I think I mentioned earlier the ones that I've noticed.
Yes, you have.
So,
Okay, so have you seen or thought of any more as we discussed them? Okay, D, have you any that you want to mention?
I really can't think too much right now.
Okay, it goes without saying that if you think of any, okay, Greg, I asked you the same question, but
Mhm.
if you think of any, then we ought to put them in and think up what we have to do to change what we're offering to accommodate them. Okay, we may not have to introduce any changes other than to answer the objections specifically, but some will be valid objections and will require that uh, we adapt the system. Uh, okay, so that's the weaknesses. Uh, I have a list of benefits of the system too. Perhaps we should postpone that to Monday's show.
yeah, and I do want to respond to Robert also, where he put people running as a third party have a better chance of winning if you take the money out of politics. Yes, they do, but at the same time, none of the people who are currently in office are going to take the big money out of politics. So the only way to get that money taken out of politics is to elect people who will.
Yes, I think that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, and we point out, okay, uh, we can't get the big money out of politics, not because there aren't some candidates and some incumbents who would like to take the big money out of politics, but because their numbers are so small that they cannot get bills to the floor
Mm-hmm.
that will take the big money out of politics.
Yeah.
Remember, you have to get these bills to the floor, and you can't do it when the leadership is opposed to these bills. And the leadership in Congress, the leadership in the state level as well, is utterly dependent on this donor money in state after state and in the country as a whole. That's how we got captured by the big money. That's the situation we face now. Okay, so I explained at the start the reason why legislation can't cut us out of the program
Yep.
is because there isn't the power in the legislatures and the Congress to pass the legislation.
Yeah. And look at our show the other day and the bill I pulled up that would protect transgender people. That one was written by Jayapal, and they can't get it out to get a vote on it.
Yes, Jayapal is very clever that way. She will write very, very good bills,
Mm-hmm.
okay, in line with the best of the ideals, and then she just accepts a situation where they never come to the floor.
Yep.
So she is basically sheep herding the progressives, keeping them in a situation where they're not totally dissatisfied with the progress they're making inside of the Democratic Party. And she's just instrumental to that whole process. She is a real problem.
Yep.
Okay, some more of the comments.
It's already 22 degrees Fahrenheit here in South Georgia.
I'm at 8 degrees.
All right, and the wind chill is much lower.
Yep.
If you,
I just walked outside just to see what it was like outside, and there was just a little slight breeze. That's it.
if you factor in the wind chill here, which is it's something like I think 15 or 16 or 20 degrees out there, but when you factor the wind chill in, we are already in minus numbers up here, okay, in Virginia.
Yeah, we're under a hard freeze warning where I live in South Georgia.
Yeah, we're expected to be at a minus 14 with the wind chill factor at 4 a.m. in the morning. And then it's going to be only going up slowly tomorrow. It's going to be in negative numbers for most of the day.
I hope you have plenty of coffee.
And we got
Yeah.
coffee, we got tea, we even got some glühwein.
I have
And
some Southern Comfort.
I can't have coffee or alcohol or anything. It stinks. But yeah, or I can have very little coffee. I can't have much because it gets my stomach upset with my ulcers. Robert, it's too cold for me, but it's warmer than last night. Last night we were -7.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's what we're going
And
through.
just like I think a day or two ago, Governor Kemp placed the entire state of Georgia under a state of emergency for the whole entire weekend.
Now, Stefania Luna says, I got to address this. Israel is not the occupiers, but rather it's the other way around, who occupied the land belonging to the Jews. The Jews did not steal any lands from the Palestinians. I beg to differ, Stefania.
Yep. They were arguing with us at the end, and that's what took us a few minutes to get over here because I flat out told them that the percentages of the population in Israel prior to 1948, and they're still arguing. So I just started ignoring them.
Yeah, and we'll probably have to ignore them here too.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear what Joe has to say.
Yeah,
Just
I do
a
too.
point, just a basic point on this, Stefania Luna. We in the United States have a secular legal system. There is a separation of church and state here in the United States. We do not recognize religious claims as law. The Jews in Israel are making a religious claim to that land. They are saying their right to that land comes from God. That is a proposition that the American government, which is a secular government, cannot accept. It is against our Constitution, our founding documents, and our founding ideals. That is the way it is. If you are an American, you will believe in those ideals. Prior to 1948, as Brandy said, the Jewish population of Palestine was at 3%. And that was after resettlement by the Jews beginning in the 1880s. Even after that, and after the migrations of Jews following the war, by 1948, that Jewish population within Palestine was still only 3%. Yes, before 1948, the Jews did not steal any lands from the Palestinians. They bought lands from the Palestinians according to the legal system that was present there at that time. So the Jews did own that land, but it wasn't that much of Palestine. In 1948, to create peace, okay, in that area, the UN basically brokered a peace deal which involved setting aside a considerable part of Palestine for settlement by Jews. That settlement was recognized in international law back then. Since that period, because of various wars between the Arabs and the Jews have expanded their holdings. But according to the international legal system, the territories, okay, of Gaza, okay, and the West Bank were still set aside by the Palestinians or for the Palestinians. The Jewish state of Israel occupied those lands and have been controlling those lands since that particular time. It was expected after the Jews won the war in 1973 that they would occupy those lands for a particular period of time. They would make peace with the Palestinians, and those lands would revert to the Palestinians in accordance with international law and expectation. But the governments of Israel have refused to make peace with the Palestinians and to recognize the rights, okay, of Palestinians, and have created an open air prison, okay, in Gaza for the Palestinians, and have basically opened up the West Bank for settlers who would be legally part of Israel on lands that had been set aside for the Palestinians. I won't talk about the situations inside of the Jerusalem area itself, which the Palestinians in recent years have been getting pushed out of gradually by the Israelis. But this situation here is entirely unjust from the viewpoint of the human rights of Palestinians. It's entirely unjust from the standpoint of international law. The Israelis do not have a legal leg to stand on with respect to what has happened. I say this as a U.S. Jew, and I also say this as someone who is very well aware of the details of Jewish history and all the oppression of Jews over the years, and as someone who was socialized by Judaism itself into recognizing the ideals of human rights, okay, and equality. And I say this as someone who applies the same standards to Jews and to Palestinians. And those standards require of Jews, in my view, that everyone who is Jewish recognize the rights, the human rights of the Palestinians. And you, my friend, are not recognizing those rights. the Arabs who became Palestinians to take the land from the Jews. What the hell are you talking about?
It's
This
that
goes back
there
to the Roman Empire and
it
the diaspora of the Jews caused by the Romans.
it's that theory that Netanyahu is trying to spread, that there was nobody there.
There was not nobody there. Yes, Palestine was underpopulated in the 1920s and 1930s, but there was people there.
Mhm.
Brandy has given you the population figures, percentages in 1948. There obviously were enough people there to fight wars against each other. So what the hell are you talking about? The Arabs were driven out. A lot of the Arabs were driven out by those wars and became refugees. And they lost their land because they became refugees. That's what has happened. Anyway, that's my statement on the matter.
I don't know what she's smoking, but I want some of that.
Anyway,
It's propaganda. She's coming in here trying to spread propaganda.
coming in here with Netanyahu's propaganda.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
We've been having this show for months, and yet you're just now coming in and chiming in with your bullshit. Like, seriously? Like, we're trying to educate you and get your mind out of the gutter. It's time to wake up.
And people can always Google what we say. You can look around. There's plenty of information out there.
And we provide links in most of our videos in the comments.
Precisely.
So
Reading is knowledge.
and okay, let me go through. Cora says, "Hi, I heard my name mentioned to you." Yes, your name was taken in vain, Cora. And we will be calling on you to help out. Don't worry, we'll be calling on you to help out.
but I also work for full time, so I know Cora's busy too, so we won't ask too much. And it's all on volunteer basis.
And it is all on a volunteer basis, right? Which we will do. Steve Wolfbrand says, I paid her generously. Oh, he paid Fran generously.
Yeah, for her
Yes,
berets.
yes, Steve, I bet you did.
I'm
I've noticed that you are very generous.
just out of curiosity, does the Red Berets have like a Discord server we can share the group link in? Because I have the group link in both the YouTube and Facebook chats for those of y'all who are wishing to join.
I'm sending invites to the Red Berets that are on my feed, on my friends list. So, because not all of them are on Facebook.
Yeah.
That's right. Some are on YouTube, a lot are on Twitter.
Yeah.
Sabby's, oh, she's running long. Okay, thank you, Steve. So, Greg Mallard, link to the new Facebook group. Where's the link to the new Facebook group?
It's in there. You just have to.
Oh, I
for
see.
some reason, not all comments are showing up even in our StreamYard chat.
Oh, that's right. I see it now in the Facebook chat.
It's in the Facebook.
Okay, great. Thanks. And people are running hard as third party. K, hi. All lost power here for several hours. It's 55 inside the trailer now. Brr, that is cold. That is cold. I hope you're all bundled up, K. Gee, God. Steve Day says bottoms up. Steve Wolfbrand says brr. A lot of people saying hello. Okay, you got power back up? Yes, at least for now, Steve. I hate this place. Robert says, Brandy, that's too cold for me. Me too. Steve Day says, U.S. citizen, non-relative sponsorship, immigration should be um, 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 equitably available to other nationalities and in recognition of the Palestinian people. Oh, by the way, one more thing, Stefania Luna, one more thing. Netanyahu is a well-known liar and fraud. He is the Israeli version of Donald Trump. He is that dishonest. He is that much of a liar. And he's given to violence. He is given to violence. And his movement is given to violence. And when he gets control of the state, it is state-backed violence. That's my final comment on that. Steve Day says U.S. citizen, non-relative sponsorship immigration should be equitably available to other nationalities and in recognition of the Palestinian people. I guess I read that before, but I didn't fully grok it. Steve Day says current non-relative sponsorship of Ukrainians. So now we get to sponsor the Ukrainians. Non-relatives get to sponsor the Ukrainians. Do we get to do a check of their background to see whether they're Nazis or not? Just a question. Because there seem to be an awful lot of them there, an awful lot of the Banderites there. I don't think we ought to have anything to do with them.
Mm-mm.
They've got a little town in New York State, the town of Ellenville, that has a lot of Ukrainians in it. And they have a little park there with statues to the Ukrainian Nazi heroes who were
Azov Battalion.
Azov Battalion, but more than the Azov Battalion, the Banderites who were responsible for the Babi Yar slaughter in the Second World War. These people are un-American. Anyway, I guess that's it for tonight, huh?
Yeah, I think we've had a good night.
Yeah,
Okay.
a very productive night. And
and-
for those, before we end, don't forget everybody to jump into Facebook and join the new Dumping the Corruption Facebook group. The link is in the Facebook chat, as well as the YouTube chat for those of you wanting to join and help out with our efforts to dump the corruption in our government.
Right, folks, please do that. We need as large a group as we can possibly do.
And I have sent invites to you, Joe, along with Dee and Brandy, that which they have accepted, and they're the first two administrators besides myself. And I would like to also make you an administrator as well.
Okay, thank you. And see whether Madelyn wants to join up as an administrator as well.
Yeah, I will also start a totally new Facebook chat dedicated to all this as well, and we can rock this thing out.
Okay.
And I
Let's
will
do
say,
this.
at least we're getting popular enough that we're starting to get trolled.
I'm ready for them. I'm ready for them. Bring it. Bring your best shot.
Okay, and so good night to everyone. Okay, and of course, Merry Christmas.
And don't forget, everybody, please stay warm.
Stay
Just
safe.
take necessary precautions. And last but not least, please, I'm begging you, please bring your fur babies inside. Because if they're cold, they don't deserve that. Please bring your pets inside and cuddle with them and give them love.
Yeah, the temperatures are dropping too low. You don't.
Yeah, I don't leave them outside. It's too
Yeah.
dangerous. Okay, Merry Christmas, everyone,
Have a good night.
and have a
You
wonderful
all,
weekend.
and y'all have a wonderful
Happy
and
holidays to
Merry
everybody,
Christmas.
too.
Bonnie, if you're listening, have a Merry Christmas as well.
It's Merry Christmas, Bonnie.
It will be Merry Christmas. Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Okay, good night.
Good night and have a Merry Christmas, everyone.
Okay.
Alrighty.
So, D. Okay. So that was good. So we got Cora Emanuel to help us out. Wonderful. Ah.